With the reveal that Qimir is the masked villain of the show, fans have gone into a frenzy trying to figure out who he really is.
What are you?
As we come to the end of the season, there are a ton of clues to look at, and some I feel are being misinterpreted.
What do you want?
The power of two.
For me, it seems all roads lead to one Sith Lord in particular. So slide on your best Sith robes and buckle up as we dive deep into the mystery of the Acolyte's Dark Lord of the Sith.
Anger, fear, loss, desire.
Before we jump in, don't forget to leave a thumbs up on the video if you enjoy it, and if you want to catch more of our Star Wars videos just like this one, then make sure to subscribe to the channel. Okay, now with all that out of the way, let's get into the mystery of the Sith in the Acolyte.
Kurtosis, handy against lightsabers, but also a sensory deprivation headpiece, like we used as younglings.
It blocks out all your senses?
So it's just you and the Force, and what you bring with you. Try it on.
During the confrontation on Kofar, it was revealed Qimir is the man behind the mask.
You really didn't know it was me.
But that's left us with more questions than answers. What transpired within the jungle can only be described as a Jedi massacre, during which Qimir himself alluded to being a Sith Lord, and seeing how he handled all but one of the Jedi present with relative ease, I'm inclined to believe him. Now, we saw May swap places with Osha, who as it turns out was taken by Qimir to his island on an unknown planet. More on that a bit later, but it's here where we witness the seduction to the dark side begin to unfold. He reveals to her what he desires most, the power of two. Meanwhile, Sol restrains May, who's almost being kept now as a prisoner as he intends to track down the Sith Lord and rescue his former Padawan Osha from his clutches. However, little does he know, Osha might just be treading down the path she was always destined to journey down, as we witness her try on the Cortosis helmet as she becomes more comfortable with where she is and who she's with, but most importantly, she becomes more comfortable with herself. Something Qimir is encouraged, and something it seems she never quite achieved whilst with the Jedi. Now, a lot of people are referring to Qimir as a new addition to the Star Wars universe, speculating he's possibly an unknown apprentice to one of the big Sith Lords at this time. However, there's a lot of clues he isn't a new character at all. In fact, he's a fairly old one.
It was a really long time ago.
With ties closer to the prequel trilogy than we could possibly have imagined. Now, there are clues in this show which hint at Qimir being something other than a Sith, perhaps even the first Knight of Ren. However, I believe these are actually hinting at a different reveal altogether, which has become all the more clearer since episode 6, although the similarities are there for sure, with their respective helmet styles, Kylo's theme playing at times.
We are.
Qimir looking similar to the only image we have of the original Knight of Ren, known simply as Ren. Oh, and of course Qimir and Kylo's unwillingness to get dressed in front of a woman from the opposing side.
It's justified.
Now, whilst with Osha, Qimir confirmed he once used to be a Jedi himself before his master threw him away, whilst he also pushed forward the idea that something similar happened to Osha, but the conversation went to the large scar on his back where he hinted it was his former master that gave it to him. Now, he stopped short of answering Osha when she asked if it was his Jedi master, so this could indicate that perhaps his Sith master did it instead, and that he didn't make the cut with either side, which could also play into him becoming the first Knight of Ren. However, the scar looks far more consistent with a light whip mark than from Force lightning, and besides, there's much more that indicates he's actually one of the most revered Sith Lords of all time, Darth Plagueis the Wise. Now, perhaps you haven't picked up on it, but Qimir is pretty wise himself.
What he really needs is something only you can give him. Absolution.
Now, apart from literally speaking the Sith code and seemingly teaching it to May too, we do know the showrunner has called the Acolyte a Sith-led show, and she's also hinted at the possibility of two Sith Lords actually appearing before the season comes to an end. And in episode 6, he tells May that he wants the power of two. This not only all but confirms he knew the Witch Coven on Brendok, and that they had ties to the Sith, as the power of two is part of their chant. It's worth pointing out here that this hooded figure standing behind the mothers could actually be a Sith Lord observing the Ascension ceremony. There's actually two of them here and we don't see their faces, and they both mysteriously disappear as soon as the Jedi show up. Anyways, one of these Sith could actually be Qimir, hinting at him being a fair bit older than we're led to believe. Not only did he say he was a Jedi a long time ago, but he seems to have much more knowledge of what actually transpired on Brendok than most. He seems to know more about Osha's life than what she does herself, and he seems to know exactly just how involved Master Soul was in the Brendok tragedy.
I've accepted my darkness. What have you done with yours?
All the pieces are adding up that the Sith were actually on Brendok, but what is it that would have drawn them there in the first place, and to this particular coven of witches, given there are other dark side force using groups around at this time as well? Now, it could be that, like the Sith, the witches have been forced into exile by the Jedi, so they share a common enemy. However, the twins themselves play into these events pretty heavily. Now, it's hinted that they were created by Mother Anastasia via the Force, or what the witches call the Thread, but it's the same thing. Now, this to me sounds exactly like what Palpatine told Anakin Plagueis could do.
He could use the Force to influence the midi-chlorians to create life.
But the connection doesn't stop there. Remember when we spoke about Kylo Ren's theme playing earlier on? Well, rather than hinting at Qimir being the first Ren or a Knight of Ren, it could be there to represent Osha and May being a dyad in the Force. Rey and Kylo are the only other Force dyad we've seen in Star Wars live action, so that theme could be used to associate the two. And it's just like their rhyme goes.
Always one, born as two.
And there's a little bit more to it, which ties into the theory a bit later, so we'll circle back on that. But what the witches could have potentially done on Brendok was not only create life through the use of the Force, but they could have also created a Force dyad, which would explain why neither twin, although they're alluded to being so, aren't that powerful. But perhaps together they are. Now, both of these achievements are something Darth Plagueis himself is known to have attempted during his life. Plagueis' manipulation of the midichlorians were ultimately what resulted in the birth of the Chosen One, as the Force's way of answering back to his dark side manipulation. But he also attempted to forge a Force dyad between himself and his apprentice Palpatine in later years, as he saw that as the key to achieving immortality. So
Power like life itself.
the witches on Brendok could have actually been where he got the idea from in the first place, and he's there to study and learn from them. They could also have some kind of deal going on as well, as we know Qimir likes to strike a deal.
But this one went back on our deal.
And it could be that in exchange for dark side witch knowledge, the Sith in return could be providing the Coven a place to hide from the Republic and the Jedi, as we know the Witch Coven is actually within an old mine, and with Chimir's helmet being made of cortosis, and the Sith of this time in Legends, they had a big interest in cortosis. Perhaps Brendok's actually one of their old cortosis mines. There's also the fact that Plagueis himself in Legends, although he was very gifted in it, didn't like lightsaber combat. And we see Qimir in the forest fight constantly turning his lightsaber off, whilst the Jedi keep theirs ignited. Osha also has those mysterious visions of May, where she sees her sister as she was when she last saw her. However, the young May doesn't have knowledge of current events.
Did you kill Indara?
Now, Plagueis, it's worth noting here, is also gifted in the ability to conjure Force illusions, just as he was gifted with the power to save others from death, and we literally see Qimir force heal Osha at the end of episode 5, which is a rare ability in itself, so it's not too out of the box to say Plagueis would have that ability too. Now, without doubt, the biggest giveaway for me comes in episode 6. After the Battle of Kofar, Qimir takes May back to his island, the same one we saw at the end of episode 1, where May journeyed there herself. Now, the Acolyte throughout the show has labelled each planet as we arrive there like Alega, Kofar and Coruscant, but for this island, they have it down as an unknown planet. Now, whilst it looks pretty similar to Arc 2, the island Luke Skywalker will one day isolate himself on, the showrunner has come out to confirm that this isn't actually that planet. Now, the only reasons they wouldn't give this planet a name in episode 6 is because it's a planet that already exists within Star Wars, and it would give too much away for a bigger reveal that's on its way. This unknown planet matches the description we have from Legends for Baldemnik, which is the planet where Darth Plagueis killed his master Darth Tenebris to ascend to the rank of Sith Master himself, and all of this happened whilst the pair were mining for the same metal that forms Chimir's helmet, cortosis. And what's more, in episode 6 we actually see a cortosis vein within Chimir's domicile, which shows that just like Baldemnik within Legends, the planet is also home to the extremely rare metal. But what the introduction of this planet also reveals, if it is indeed Baldemnik, and let's be real, at this point it's far more likely than not, is that in the timeline of Darth Tenebris and Plagueis within Legends is different to what it could be within canon, as in Legends the Sith didn't discover cortosis on Baldemnik for another 65 years, though it's been shifted around. Now that's not the only shift that could be on the horizon. Whenever I've mentioned the possibility of Darth Plagueis being Qimir in other videos, people would point out that Darth Plagueis is of the Mune species, whereas Qimir clearly isn't, and whilst this is true within Legends, I've done a bit of digging, and the truth is Darth Plagueis' species, like Darth Tenebrous', has never been established within the current canon. They went out the window when Disney acquired Lucasfilm back in 2012. In fact, the only references we have to Darth Plagueis in canon nowadays is what Palpatine told Anakin about him in Revenge of the Sith.
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
And a few lines of Palpatine reminiscing on his old master in a Tarkin novel. Now, there is a reference to Plagueis being immune in a visual guide that was released in 2016. However, this visual guide pulls information from both canon and Legends for the game it was brought out for, so even that isn't actually canonising Plagueis' species. It's very similar to the whole Ki-Adi-Mundi birthday thing. Now, if this is true, and Qimir does indeed turn out to be the canon version of Darth Plagueis, which I believe to be the case, it would mean a big change to the character we knew from Legends, such as he isn't a wealthy financer and he was actually a Jedi at one point in his life, potentially even trained by Vanessa Rao himself if
Something to tip the scales.
the scar on his back was indeed inflicted by a light whip, which does really feel to be the case as they introduced Vanessa's light whip in the very same episode they did the scars. It's likely the case the Jedi sensed his darkness and decided to stop with his training, only for him to be picked up by the Sith, which, going by Legends, would be Darth Tenebrous. Now, this potentially also gives double meaning to the term Power of Two, the same term Qimir used himself in Episode 6.
What do you want?
The power of two.
He could be calling it the Power of Two, as that's the term the Coven used, which alludes to the power of the Force dyad, but he could also be talking about the power of two Sith, in other words, the Rule of Two, which explains why he's wanting to train an Acolyte himself. With Legends timelines out the window, it's not clear if Plagueis has killed Darth Tenebrous already, or if he's still alive, but in order to be a true Sith Master himself, he must have an apprentice to teach, and I think we're finally seeing that play out now with Osha. All in all, I think the Acolyte's introducing us to the canon version of Darth Plagueis, and what we're seeing here is essentially him wanting to fulfill the Sith's Rule of Two, but what's more, I feel like he also wants to wield the power of the dyad. Not only would this closely align with Plagueis' desires from Legends, but it would also go on to inform a lot of Palpatine's actions in the movies. I think as Sol's likely been trying to cover his own darkness and past mistakes, the same can be said for Vanessa. She's likely got a few skeletons in her closet when it does come to Qimir, and I can really see Sol taking the fall for what happened to the Jedi on Kothar as part of his attempt to conceal the truth of what happened on Brendok, thus leaving the Jedi unaware of the Sith's continued existence. So do you think Qimir is Darth Plagueis? And if so, would you be happy with this canon version, or would you prefer him to be of the Mune species like in Legends? As always, drop your thoughts, theories and wildest speculations down in the comments below. Give the video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to catch more. I'll catch you in the next one. May the Force be with you.